Welcome back to another edition of Zero Blog 30. Today we're going to have a couple things to talk about. Talking about one, our guy White Sox Dave from Barstool Chicago, one of the original Chicago boys, is going to come on. He just went on maybe the biggest white 35 to 60-year-old vacation that you possibly could ever go to. He's going to tell us about that, and it's going to, spoiler alert, involves a lot of places that were featured in Band of Brothers. Yeah. He's going to talk about that tour. It's awesome. He's super excited about it. I can't wait for you to hear about his excitement of seeing that level of history, especially right now when we just passed 80 years since Normandy. So it's a apropos time. Not only that, but last week, one of the biggest legends that I've ever met, one of the biggest legends in the history of the Marine Corps, passed away, Woody Williams. We're going to replay his interview at the end of the show. I went back and listened to it after I found out that he passed away, and it really reminds me every time something like that happens, how fortunate we are to sit behind these microphones and have the connections that we do to be able to talk to people like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Woody Williams had multiple spots on the Crucible. Like, there been ships named after him, bases, streets, and all kinds of things. An absolute legend. You're going to want to hear from him. Just a refresher of all the crazy things that he had to do from 17 years old.
Was he the last remaining?
He was the last living Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. Not just the Pacific Theater, but the entirety of the war, which is remarkable.
I mean, it's a good reminder of why it's important to get these stories and talk to people and record this stuff, because that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
We should start doing more of those type of interviews. And I was blown away just last week watching some of the clips of like our 4-star generals that went over to participate in some of the festivities over there. And just the amount of deference that those generals were showing people that were wearing uniforms with PFC stripes on it or Lance Corporal stripes on it. Not Lance Corporal, they didn't have that then, but PFC stripes, and like how much it meant to those veterans, the World War II veterans, that they were still getting like the accolades that they never really went for. It wasn't the accolades that they were going for, it was to save the world, and which they did. And I'm glad that we have got to talk to people who participated that along the way. Also, speaking of our world war, one of the war's biggest, I guess, threats or bad parts about it was it's not new, but the research that has gone into traumatic brain injury. I think this is the war, like our war, Afghanistan and Iraq, were the ones that really focused in on traumatic brain injuries, things that we didn't know before. They have a new way to tell 15 minutes after there's a blast if you're going to have a traumatic brain injury.
No way.
Yeah, it's like a litmus test essentially for traumatic brain injury. So we're going to tell you about that and all that today is going to be brought to you by our good friends at NASCAR. Oh, good NASCAR. Wow. Okay. NASCAR is coming here to Chicago. I assume that you're going. It's on Sunday.
Hell yes.
Yep.
I'll be there.
I mean, that's like little boy mom heaven.
June 16th. Yep. Oh, buddy, anything with cars, anything. We're obsessed with the movie Cars anyway.
Yeah.
So I heard Lightning McQueen will be there. I hope that's true.
Oh, long time
Told
still.
him that. Yeah, long time still.
Brick by brick, Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
When we were going down pit road, you're like, I'm going to send a video to Cash and he's going to lose his mind.
Yeah, I got a lot of street cred on that last trip in Charlotte.
Mom knows race cars.
Helicopters, military stuff.
Yeah.
He was a huge Matchbox 20 fan. Rob Thomas was there, So.
Yeah. So if you're in the city on this weekend on the 16th, make sure that you go check it out. But if you're not going to be here, you can check it out on Fox. It's going to start at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a nighttime race, which is great. It's a nighttime race on the East Coast at 7 o'clock Eastern.
This one's not in Chicago, just so you know.
Oh,
no!
Thank God, dude.
Off, buddy.
I'm so glad that it's not.
I was going along with it.
I was like, I thought because I was reading this and I was so upset because I'm doing this 100-mile bike ride, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be back in time to go.
No, July is the one. This one is at the Iowa Speedway.
Oh, still good.
First NASCAR Cup race ever at the Iowa Speedway. And the NASCAR Salutes continues at Iowa Speedway. Make sure to tune in on Sunday, June 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern here in the USA. And again, they've been doing an awesome, the NASCAR Salutes thing. The entire racing community, from the pit crews to the drivers to the teams, they're all rallying around NASCAR Salutes to show respect and gratitude to the brave men and women who fight to protect our country. So thank you to NASCAR. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Never been more happy that an event was happening in Iowa.
Yeah, because you don't want to miss it.
I know. I did. I was like, how did I mess this up? I don't want to do both of those. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the litmus test thing. You want to get into that?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. This is sounding kind of like, who's the girl with the black turtleneck who talk like this?
Elizabeth Holmes.
This sounds a little Elizabeth Holmes to me. This is how she talked, right? Like a drunk lady from Boston.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is a new rapid test that checks for traumatic brain injuries using a single drop of blood that is expected to make its debut in the military in the coming months. That was her thing, remember?
Yeah.
With a single drop of blood, I can tell you everything that's wrong with you.
You really took a lot of wind out of myself with that example.
I'm sorry.
I was really pumped about this, and I'm like, this is pseudoscience.
Oh boy, glad you're. Who's Mad Dog's not behind it, is he?
No, it's actually 3M.
Oh God, okay. Oh, the earplug people?
No, I'm just kidding. It's not them.
The product marks one of the most significant steps towards TBI patients' care in the past 20 years, according to Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Dangler, an Army neuroscientist who works with TBI. They're waiting on approval by the FDA. The test can ascertain whether a person's blood contains the protein markers associated with mild TBI or concussion after just 15 minutes. In combat, that speed can help military medics quickly decide how to treat an injured service member, avoiding unnecessary evacuations and CT scans, and improving TBI case management in the field. So say you're in a convoy and the convoy gets blown up and you're within the blast radius, but you're still functioning okay. They need you out there. Do they need to send you away to the medics, or can you stay on?
See, the way that you phrased that and the way that I just read it was so differently than the first time that I read it.
Yeah.
It's, can you stay? Not, do you need to go?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's do we need, is this necessary? Do they have enough of a brain injury for us to send them back? Or what's the protein situation that they got going on
the
here?
key phrase here is avoiding unnecessary evacuations and
yeah, that's different.
Expensive medical testing like CT scans, but also improving TBI case management in the field. Earlier tests designed to help diagnose concussions or more severe TBI rely on blood plasma or serum and must be processed in a lab that can take hours or days. The new test requires about 20 microliters of blood, which is about half the volume of a raindrop or a teardrop. Not me, I got huge tears.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to brag, but I'm really.
Crocodile.
Yep. Similar to the at-home blood glucose test, a patient's blood is placed on a cartridge that is inserted into a portable device for analysis. While glucose tests use a finger prick, these tests require blood drawn from a vein.
It does look like it, though. Like, that's all the little device looks like, is like one of the at-home diabetes tests.
Yep, just like a little tiny handheld, easy peasy.
But either way, that's pretty damn cool.
It's super cool. Do I trust it? I don't know.
I think I will for now.
I don't know.
There's going to be something that comes out that's really messed up about this.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great idea. And the further that you get along, and maybe that's just the way the Military Times kind of framed it, if you need to leave or not. Hopefully it's, oh no, they need to leave.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine thinking about that, like the evacuation to make it worse. I'm not sure if, have we ever talked about how uncomfortable it is to ride on a stretcher in a helicopter?
Pretty uncomfortable, I would imagine.
It's wildly uncomfortable. I didn't need to be on a stretcher, but it's like a legit litter, like the wooden one that you're on.
Yep.
And your head is still kind of on your helmet. So you're like bouncing around in there.
Yep.
I imagine if you do have a small TBI, if you have to do like a 30-minute flight, they make it worse.
They actually make it worse, jostling you around.
Jostling your brain around all over the place.
Well, nearly 500,000 service members worldwide have received a TBI during military training or deployment. Honestly, the most common places to get TBI is not combat. It's all the training you do. There's so much hard shit you can bonk your head off of, like everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And just all kinds of shit.
Just the bugle sticks.
Just the bugle sticks alone. And just goofing in the smoke pit is probably the #1 spot to get a TBI.
Yeah.
Pretending reenacting a wrestling match or something like that. But yeah, a lot of TBI. I'll trust it when the NFL starts using it. When I start to see those on
I don't
the
know if that's a good one either.
Uh-oh.
Because
really?
I don't think they care that much.
They don't have the best interests of the players at heart. That's shocking to me.
No. Yeah.
All right. Very well.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's that story. I hope it is a thing that works out, because I would have liked to have had that. I think that if you can identify it quickly, maybe there's different medications that'll come along that they could help ease that little bit of pain. Before we bring on Dave, I wanted to show one story. There's a guy that just retired, and I'm looking at his pictures on Instagram, and it has his rack on there, and it's a pretty impressive career that he had. He has a Bronze Star with a V. He has a Purple Heart with a star, so that means he has 2. He has a Navy Commendation Medal with a Valor with 3 awards for the Valor Award, and then the Navy Achievement Medal with Valor too. So all in told, he has 5 different Valor Awards over the course of his career. He retired, and I thought that sometimes you don't get great sentiment from people that are leaving. I think this is the epitome of what leaders should sound like when they retire. I have no idea who this guy is. Like, I don't know him personally
His
or anything
handle
like
is
that.
_check_.
For me, I think this is a beautiful sentiment for a leader. And it's basically how I felt about leaving the Marine Corps too. And I definitely didn't do it for 23 years. He said, my retirement ceremony was last Thursday, and I have had a week to reflect over my 23 years in the Marine Corps. I consider myself one of the luckiest Marines I know. I have the honor of leading, developing, and at times making mistakes. I was entrusted with commanding our nation's best in war. I have cherished the responsibility and accountability of that privilege. I am reminded of personal standard I embraced many years ago. And at the end of the day, what matters most are the reputation and the ability to look in the mirror, knowing that you made decisions based on your mission and the welfare of your Marines and their families. Reputation, and as judged by subordinates, peers, and superiors alike, decisions that you felt in your heart were the right ones. If these are valid criteria for self-assessment, then I am at peace, and I do feel at peace today. I have served my nation and my Marines with loyalty to the best of my ability, and I leave behind a resilient, battle-tested, and well-led Marine Corps of which I have never been prouder. Everyone I serve with, thank you for all you do and continue to long after I leave this stage. Blood is left thicker than water, but many. Can you read that? I can't. My eyes are fucked.
Blood is thicker than water, but not many bonds are stronger than the bond forged in combat. And he goes on to talk about the companies that he served with, and this is the last day I will wear the uniform. It has been an absolute privilege. I will not miss the Marine Corps, but I will miss my Marines. Thank you. I will remain Semper Fidelis, your bestie. And then what's his name? Let's see if we say Paul. Ah, okay, Paul.
Long time Stoli Paul.
All right, long time Stoli Paul. But you're right. Yes, that's great metrics to judge yourself off of when you're in the Corps. Can you look at yourself in the mirror every day and know you're doing the best for the Marines and their families? And that's the attitude that I wish more leaders had.
Yep, and that was the exact sentiment of people like Woody Williams whenever he left. He was like, I didn't serve for that long, but everybody that I served beside, I will always miss. And it won't be the Marine Corps that I ever miss. It'll just be the Marines.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love that. All right, let's bring on Dave to see what it was like for him in old Germany.
Yeah,
Dave, thanks for joining us, my man.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. So, Dave, where did your interest in World War II history? Because it wasn't just a one-off trip. You've been a Band of Brothers guy. We've talked about it before. You were on our recap shows when we watched the Masters of the Air. Where did your love for all things World War II come from?
I will say not all things World War II. I completely forgot that Masters of Air was even a thing. After like 5 or 6 episodes, it was such trash. But I don't know. I think a lot of it started during the pandemic in 2020, where all you could do is just binge watch everything. So, but I mean, Band of Brothers is 2001, was it?
Yeah,
right around then. So it's
it was right when like 2 weeks after or before 9/11, something like that.
That's right. It was a couple weeks before 9/11. So 01. But I don't know. It's a lot of. Kind of an amalgamation of a lot of things. I love that series, obviously. I like history as a whole. I've made the joke a few times. I've stolen it from Shane Gillis, but the early onset Republican is just raging and coursing through my veins right now. And you said it. It's like every 35-year-old dude on Earth white dude on Earth likes World War II shit. So, but it was more when my sister. She was supposed to be in Germany for a year, stationed at Landstuhl. And then within a month of her moving out there for her year of service, she was on the Ukraine-Russia border. So I was like, all right, what is actually happening in this world? And it's weird how everything that is happening current day, is directly tied to all these grainy black and white footage that we saw from 80 years ago, and so I don't know. I just like to know what's going on around me, and a lot of it, I don't want to say started at World War II because there was a lot that built up prior to 1939 and Germany invading Poland. But it's I don't know. It's just something I enjoy. It's a nice little hobby, I guess, at this point, and I guess that's it. I love consuming as much info on it as possible.
So when you were designing this trip, where were some of the big places that you wanted to go see?
So it was, there was a lot of it that I only hit the tip of the iceberg. Like I was in Bastogne, and I remember texting you and Connor, who I am glad. Thank you for not having him on this episode.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Like I would come back even with Connor, just to like consume even more, because there's so much like that. I thought I hit a lot of it, but you're opened up to like, oh, I got to see this next. I got to see that next, you know? But we started in Germany, in Munich, obviously the birthplace of Nazism. So right off the bat, you see little little antique shops basically all over town, and they'll have like antique steins from Nazi era Germany, and they'll just like put little stickers over the swastikas and everything. So like you're surrounded by this stuff every single place you go. But I did not make it to the Eagle's Nest. I wanted to make it there, obviously, where the 101st ended, and raided his castle or whatever you want to call it. And I didn't make it to Normandy, which would have been unbelievable, being out there for the 80th anniversary of invading France and turning the war around. But I saw a ton. I saw different points of the Maginot Line. Like you're in Strasbourg, France, a normal city, and you see all these fortifications still.
Yeah.
I went to Hatton, France, Bastogne, Belgium. Obviously Munich. We went to Dachau concentration camp, which 101st helped liberate. So I saw it all. It's I don't even know where to start. So I guess
So I guess I'll phrase it like this, because you've watched a lot of documentaries, you've watched a lot of shows that are about it. And when I went to Okinawa for the first time, like as Marines, we do a lot of like history on the Pacific Theater in World War II, and you learn about the Battle of Okinawa, and learning about it and seeing it on a fact sheet and having a couple lines that you memorize is so unbelievably different than when you walk into the jungle and you see what it was like. Was there a point in your trip where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe people fought here?
It was in Bastogne. You're walking through forests and you're seeing foxholes. And obviously everybody knows, and then I hate comparing it to, and Band of Brothers is a work of fiction. Obviously it's based on real events, but it's a work of fiction. Those scenes where they're just dodging artillery for, days and days on end. And you're like, this actually happened here. And they held strong and kept this city and this world, for all intents and purposes, on its feet. Is like, that sent chills down my spine, and it still does thinking about it right now. Just seeing these foxholes in the middle of the Ardennes forest, middle of woods. And
what was your visibility like? Like how far could you see in front of you?
So in Bastogne, a lot of the city's economy is based on the museums and tourism and everything for the Battle of the Bulge. And I, like, every time I was in this forest, I would look out just over, like, I don't think it was corn, but like just cornfields basically, and try to like kind of put myself, there's a Panzer, there's the Wehrmacht coming at you, and you could see far, but like we all see the maps, especially right now with Russia and Ukraine, like with all the arrows pointing everywhere. So I was trying to get that out of my head and just like imagine what it would be like if I were in the 101st and defending these trenches and these front lines. And I don't think I did it justice in my own head even, but like you could see for miles, really.
Yeah,
it's wild.
A whole new perspective. Like, and you're right, like putting yourself in their shoes and being like, would I have the bravery to stay in this foxhole with Artie dropping all around me? Like, it just puts what they did into a whole new perspective, I have to imagine. Did you learn, because he was saying too, like, you've done your research and everything, what were a couple things that you learned that were like, you had no idea that, like, oh wow, I'm surprised by this? Did anything hit you like that?
A lot of the museums were like, it's for mass consumption, so it's like it's hitting all the cliche talking points that we all know. So I don't think there was anything I necessarily learned out there, but I will say this: people in Belgium were like, I've never been like, people were so nice to me in Belgium, and specifically I only went to Bastogne, that I felt like uncomfortable because it's like, oh, American, American, American. Thank you, thank you. I
Oh,
sent
you
out that
guys have it
tweet.
wrong. I'm White Sox Dave. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I legitimately felt guilty. People were offering to pay for my food and my drinks. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I cannot accept this in any way.
And I thought that was because you told me that when you first came back. And recently there's been like a trend that I've seen a lot on TikTok of how Europeans will treat Americans like shit. Like if you're in the hotel industry and you hear somebody that's talking in like Spanish, they'll give the Spanish speaking person much more attention than they will the person who sounds like they're American. And I imagine that is true in a lot of spots, but in places like Bastogne, very different. And I thought that juxtaposition was very interesting.
I don't know if this is like, I don't want to paint an entire country. Like Germany, everybody was insanely nice to us.
They've had it done to them before. They'll be okay.
But Harry Dunn from Dumb and Dumber says, the French were kind of assholes.
Yeah.
They were kind of dicks.
Yeah.
But here's a question for you. Okay, so I met this lady. She was with her husband. We were eating next to her. We were trying to order. In Belgium, they only speak French, so, and not a ton of English, which was different from France and Germany and Switzerland and other places I went to. But she told me the story of how it was her uncle. This lady was probably 50, I would say. How her uncle was born in December of 44 in a basement in the middle of Bastogne, Belgium.
Wow.
And she thought it was going to be a girl the entire pregnancy because she already had 2 boys, and like everything in her head told her it was going to be a girl this time. Out comes a boy she didn't have a name for. So this American soldier knew that she had a baby, an infant, a newborn that she was hiding in this basement of this house in the middle of Bastogne. And like she said, I forget exactly what she said, but she said Charlie was yelling to other soldiers, "Hey, Charlie, the Germans are coming through the window." And there was some things lost in translation, I'm sure.
Right.
But she's like, "Oh, I like that name. I'll name him Charlie," which that's not a name in France, or it's not a French name at all. It's not even an American name. It's a nickname, technically.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to this day, he's turning 80 this December. He's known as the Bulge Baby, Charlie the Bulge Baby, I think it is. And he just run around town as Charlie. And I'm like, this guy's only 80 years old. He's younger than my grandparents, it's so that's wild. But I told her, I'm like, well, here's my connection. And Perconti and Band of Brothers in the 100th Air Force, his nephew was my pitching coach in high school. So I pulled up my phone and I showed her, I'm like, here's my connection. And I think she thought, because of the lack of translation, that he was my uncle. So I let her believe that after I couldn't tell her, like,
it was too complicated to like.
No, I don't think. I think you made her day.
Yeah.
I think if it came from a place of innocence, now she's gonna add that to her repertoire. Like,
was she
I actually met his nephew.
Was she like?
So excited! I showed him I googled Perconti Band of Brothers, and she's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, no, like I knew his nephew when I was 12, but like she didn't completely understand it. So. But yeah, you got stories like that though. That story about Charlie and how he's alive and kicking, and the baby of the Bulge or whatever his nickname is. That's the stuff that stuck with me. And being in the forest, and not necessarily the museum stuff where you're looking at a new model of a Spitfire that's reconstructed. Who cares about that stuff? It's like those are the stories that I appreciated.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you got the chance to go do that. I would love to go back. I would love to go see it.
We have to. Like I want to get to the Netherlands now so I can take in where the Battle of Market Garden was taking place. I have to get to Normandy, the Eagles. Like there's so much more I want to do. And
how did your girlfriend deal with your tour of wanting to go see nothing but the most horrific events in American history or in world history?
In Bastogne. We got to Bastogne and it was pouring rain. She knew we were going to be in the middle of a forest. And I'm like, I'm going. And she's like, just go. I'm like, all right, see ya. Peaced out, got in the car and drove over there. It was like legit a tractor tour. Yeah. And it was like 55 degrees and like a misty rain. And it was butt ass cold. But like, I'm like, these guys were in the middle of December.
Probably the worst thing anybody's ever gone through there.
I will not ever bitch about this 50 degree and kind of shitty weather, especially considering where I am right now. But, and then I mixed it enough for her as well.
Yeah.
she had her fun.
It was a good
But,
balance. A good balance.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they have the stickers over all the Nazi symbols.
Well, isn't it still kind of like a taboo, hard to talk about thing for them?
They don't
right?
even
It's
say it.
still-
They don't even say the word.
So our tour guide for this beer tour we were on, who showed us all of this stuff, he was from England, so he spoke King's English, whatever it is, like perfect English and everything. But when he would bring in German people, there was a couple of times, and I don't want to like misquote anybody, and I don't even know these guys' names or anything, but they were like, yeah, he took back the land that was rightfully his. And I couldn't tell if it was like a lost in translation thing, but it like made my ears perk up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I didn't like combat it or anything, but there were a few of those like one-off
Where you're like,
comments.
"Ah."
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird, yeah, it's like you're saying too, it's like a good reminder that it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
Like,
I was just
the
thinking that Charlie
scars,
baby
yeah.
could be president.
And the scars are still on the on the land from the arty rounds and like all that stuff. Like it's
They
crazy.
find unexploded ordinances all the time.
So
yeah,
they have a museum. There's the Bastogne War Memorial Museum, which is it's 1 billion square feet, and it's huge, and it's pretty new. It's only a few years old from what I think it's 2019, so it's only like 5 years old.
Oh wow.
And they have all these like live reenactments. It's really cool. But they have the 101st Airborne Museum, which is like a few rooms, and they have it's just in this little souvenir case. I could have bought grenades from the fields, from the foxholes out there, but I'm like, how am I going to get this fucking home?
right. Yeah.
Like through TSA and all that. So I didn't. I kind of wish I would have, but I don't know if it would have been worth getting arrested potentially. But
There's
yeah,
still so much stuff out there in the woods, and yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I would bet you could take a metal detector out and just find like empty magazine casings and bullet casings, just all of that kind of shit still.
Dude, not just, I mean, because my kennels that I worked with in Okinawa, they were in the jungles. We would go training in the jungle, like looking for, like we would place the bombs that we were looking for, the training aids. But occasionally one of the dogs would respond in the middle of the woods, and we knew where we were, where the Battle of Okinawa was, and we'd have to call out EOD because there would be we'd go and be like, oh shit, well, here's another one. And like there was times at the Jungle Warfare Training Center, nobody had gone up there with dogs for a while. We pulled out like 15.
Wow.
And like a 4 or 5 hour training, like we took little swaths of it and went out, and the guys that ran the Jungle Warfare Training Center, they're like, dude, they've been doing training out here for like 40 years at this point with all this unexploded ordnance
and shit.
And that was just in like a couple hours. Imagine how much is actually out there.
Yeah. Crazy.
I don't want to be grim or anything, but like all of Eastern Ukraine is just a minefield right now. It's going to take hundreds of years to get, like, you're going to hear
like Cambodia
farmer. Yeah. It's just minefields as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Nuts, man.
Nuts. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on, and like, thanks for letting us live vicariously through a dream trip through World War II history. It's awesome.
It was, and I didn't spend a lot of money, flights included, and I think I dropped like $5,000 total, and I was staying in the absolute best Airbnbs I could stay in.
Yeah, you showed me some of the spots. They were really nice. Like the prices were, I would have thought way more.
Yeah.
It was nothing. Cool. I lived at like, I mean, $5,000 is not nothing, but for how we spent 10 days in Europe, it was nothing.
And you got to see your sister. She's doing good.
Yeah, I got to see my sister. She's doing well.
Niece
and nephews are doing well. They're it's kind of funny having niece and that speak a little German out of nowhere, but they do.
And you know, Dave, whenever you talking about when your sister went on when she was like in Ukraine, I thought about that in the way that we had covered the topic, like where a lot of times we do it from a very military centric perspective. But I respected the amount that you knew and that you looked in based on where your family was.
Yeah.
And it's something as like the veteran or military member that you kind of lose track of, where your family is back home trying to piece together where you're at, what's going on, what kind of danger you're in, just from news sources, like a aggregated news source list. So I appreciated how much you obviously cared about your sister and the harm's way that she was in.
I won't go that far. Apparently, NATO is going to have boots on the ground there sooner than later. If not,
Oh, you heard it here
if they
first.
don't already.
Yeah.
And I think Russia's head of state knows that. So, but that's a whole different convo. And she's safe. It's not. I mean, she just took a 2-week vacation herself.
Yeah.
Where she went and explored all of Germany, and she made it to Verdun. Which I didn't, and I didn't even say that. So my brother-in-law is my sister's husband's uncle, dude I never even met, is a professor at, I think, Illinois State University.
Shout out
and
LA
so in
Smith.
summer he does guided tours. So I had like, this time he didn't bring a group out. It was just my sister and I.
Oh,
So
cool. So
I
you got
had
like
that,
a private.
and he was an encyclopedia of knowledge.
That's
like
awesome.
just it was awesome having that guided tour. But they made it to Verdun, which is more World War One, not to make
We'll
light
allow
of
it. We'll allow it.
of that.
Still
bad.
bad,
I think
yeah.
1 million people fucking died there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one place I didn't make it, and then Normandy, which I would have loved. But I have to get back there with all you guys. Like, I would love that. Would make my life if you guys could like go out there with me.
Yeah, that would be
Belgium,
great.
Netherlands, Germany, France. I mean, it's all right there.
Yep.
Super
all
cool.
A couple hours apart. Yeah, we rented a car and just drove it all.
That's awesome.
And it was super easy.
Cool. I love it.
All right, Dave. Well, we appreciate it, my man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Dave.
of course. Anytime, guys. I love your show.
All right, we love you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
The Barstool podcast I have listened to with any regularity.
Thank you. Appreciate that. In your face, pardon my take.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. See you, man.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, I'll see you guys around the office.
All right.
See you in 2 minutes.
Yep. See you in just a second. All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis, which today is going to be presented to you by our good friends at Mad Rabbit. It's beach season.
Yep. Out there by the lake.
I was just out here yesterday at the golf course, came back. I was good. I had Mad Rabbit on my tattoos. I had sunscreen on. I was ready to go because it's peak beach season. And you know what that means? My tattoos are in full view. I know you guys can't see me unless you're watching on Rumble. So you may not know about you know about this. I have shitty tattoos. If you listen to this show, you know I have shitty tattoos.
But I mean, half the office now at least has, everybody here has tattoos in some way or another. And 30% of Americans have tattoos now. And 40% of people under 35 have tattoos.
I saw an MMA fighter without one, and I thought it was the weirdest thing I've seen.
Yeah. And one thing I did not know this, that like, just like your skin can get damaged by the sun, so can your tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a work of art for your skin to let it get ruined by the sun. That's why you need Mad Rabbit. They are committed to reinventing tattoo aftercare. Founded by two friends with a passion for ink, Mad Rabbit creates simple, effective, and natural products that help improve and preserve tattoos, all delivered directly to your door. Their hero product, the Tattoo Balm, sells once every 90 seconds for a reason. It revitalizes, replenishes, and preserves tattoo ink with clean and natural ingredients, and it is effective on both new and old tattoos and skin types, all skin types. So again, you're using it, you're putting on your tattoos. I know we have boxes here around the office. I know everybody's putting it on. They're heading down to Lake Mish.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to wear a bunch because I'm doing a 110-mile bike ride.
I know. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about getting another tattoo.
Of what?
One for the boys. Something for my boys.
Oh, nice.
I'll have to put Mad Rabbit on it. Keep it fresh.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now it's the time to try Mad Rabbit. They've preserved over 3 million tattoos, and they've got an exclusive offer just for being Zero Block 30 listeners. If you go to madrabbit.com/ZBT25 and use promo code ZBT25, you're going to get 25% off. That's 25% off when you head to madrabbit.com/ZBT25 and use their promo code ZBT25. All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Kate, what do you got?
Do I have anything? No, I don't.
You don't?
Shocking.
You don't?
I don't think I have anything.
I had the most lovely Sunday afternoon, maybe the most wholesome Sunday afternoon I've had in a long time.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so my squad, like, because I'm doing this bike ride, 110 miles. No, I don't know if I've mentioned that or not.
You have a couple times, but I would like to hear more. It's coming up this week, right?
Yeah, it's coming up on Friday.
And where are you biking to again?
So we start downtown, I think by the Bean, and then we go all the way to New Buffalo, Michigan.
I've been. fun fact about New Buffalo, it's wonderful. It's a really cute little town on the lake. Great hot dog shop.
Okay.
And there's a giant buffalo statue that has a large buffalo penis underneath it.
Oh, I love buffalo dick.
And
Yeah.
all these people were out eating hot dogs on these little picnic tables. And my son ran over and slapped the metal and went ding. And he goes, penis. And then he said something like, Mom, you have one. Like, it was something like, Mom has this. And all the people were like, what? And I was like, I don't know, buffalo dog. It's fine. So cool. Wow. That's
Yeah. So Sunday,
right.
that's not what I was going to talk about. But
Let me know if
this
you see it.
Sunday, we went on, me and like 3 other families, we went on this family bike ride where all of our kids and spouses and everybody, we went down to the woods. And Annalise had to persevere more than I've ever seen her have to persevere.
She's not like a
She's not a
super
bug lady.
outdoorsy bug. Oh, the
Oh.
cicadas.
And the cicadas there were
Dude.
like a legit blanket.
I live here in the city and I rarely leave it. And this weekend was the first time because everybody's like cicadas. It's like all over the news, all over
Right.
social media. I hadn't seen a single one
Oh,
throughout all this scuttlebutt. We went outside the city to the suburbs this weekend. Pat put the window down for 1 second at a stop sign, like 7 in the car. Like they were everywhere. We were screaming. He had to punch one in the head.
oh, see,
out of the
yeah,
car.
Annalise hates bugs, like just in general.
Because I was like, I will drive our whole family off the highway if one touches me. Well, I was
Yeah.
like, I'll do it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, she
Yeah.
would have appreciated
Yeah.
you being there because
Ugh.
we were on our trip, and she doesn't like going in. She's not much of a woods lady anyway.
Yeah.
Like occasionally she likes to go hiking, so
Okay.
she will do that. But actually, just being in the woods and like hanging out in the woods, not her thing.
Right.
The level of cicadas that she had to deal with,
Oh, it was insane.
and you could hear it like as we were leaving our actual like little neighborhood, village, town, whatever you want to call it. When we were leaving, getting closer and closer to more woods, the noise became louder and louder and louder. By the time you were in Thatcher Woods, it sounded like you were inside a fire alarm. Like it was so unbelievably loud. And she rides like this little beach cruiser bike. And one of my buddies was like, hey, let's just take real quick. It's like a 1.5 mile, 2 mile trail through the woods so the kids could try their hand at little trail riding, which the kids were amped about.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them weren't super pumped about the bugs, but they're like, whoa, that's like mud riding. Well, let's go do it. Annalise is on like a beach cruiser. Everybody else has essentially mountain bikes. She has a mountain bike, but wanted to take that anyways.
Yeah.
And so she's going, and you could hear in the back going, woo, 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 like every 2, woo, 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 Matthew,
Yeah.
like screaming for me to come
Yeah.
help. I turn around at one point and I look behind me, and she's wearing this white like tank top, and she has, I shit you not, like 10, 15
oh, God.
all over,
Oh,
and
God.
she doesn't notice it
I would
because
be screaming.
she's keeping them like in her face, like she's trying to keep them out of her face. Doesn't notice the ones
I
that
would
are on her.
fucking die.
I turn around and I go, babe, don't. It's like, just stop. I need to tell you something. Stop. And she was like, I don't want to stop. I gotta go. I'm like, you have to stop. I need to tell you something. And she's like, whatever it is, Matthew, I don't want to fucking hear it right now.
This was her World War II.
Oh, it was.
In
This
the
is her
woods.
Bastogne.
Yeah,
It's her
this is
personal
her-
Bastogne.
right, okay.
And so she's freaking out already, and she doesn't even know that they're all over her. And I go, babe, look down. And
No.
she goes, it's like the
Yeah.
most eruptive, high-pitched shriek. And she's, I just want to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I don't care which way we have to go. I just want to go. Why would you bring me to this? Steve, why would you do this? Why? I told you I didn't want to. And when she gets out of the woods, she is like sweating.
Yeah.
You can tell that she's like emotional. We got back to our house and she had legit like 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah.
Like for a while. We were supposed to go to a barbecue that night, and she was like, I'm going to be late because I just need to sit here. I need to have a high noon, and I need to listen to some cello music.
Yeah.
So she just absolutely went through it, but she did it. She did it.
100% Team Annalise on this one. I would have.
I kept
Yeah.
using my Marineisms too when I was like, courage is not the absence of fear, but biking through the woods despite that fear.
Yep.
You can never be brave without being scared.
No, I would die. Oh, my
She was
heart
like, shut up! I
would've
don't
killed
want to
you.
hear it.
Would have killed you.
Yeah. It was a good time.
Hell yeah.
I enjoyed that. And
That's
so I
good.
can't wait to do this. I haven't done anything like this ever. Like the super long, like I've never done a marathon. I've never done anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm pumped about this. But I got a feeling it's not going to be as hard as I have it in my head, because all my buddies are like, there's a couple bars along the way that you stop at,
Oh, cool.
and some of them are smoke inside,
Fuck
which
yeah.
they're pumped about.
God,
They're like, we're going to
bless.
sit there in our little tight bike shorts with our bike diapers on and just ripping heaters inside
Love it.
and
Yep.
be miserable for the next 40 miles.
Bike diapers?
Oh, yeah, because, you know, the bike seats are so thin that
I was
they're
you
like
guys
the
are,
pad.
I thought the like outfits
Oh,
were
no,
so,
I'm going to stop to piss.
okay. I
Yeah.
thought the outfits were so tight that like you just piss in them or something.
No,
Okay.
it does feel like it.
That's a relief.
Like that I think is one of the more awkward feelings, because I've told you I've shit in a diaper before.
Yeah, yes. I
Yeah,
don't
with
wanna
me
talk
and my
about it.
buddy.
Sure, yeah, no. Okay.
With the hamster
Yep,
chips and what
mhm,
have you.
Sure.
So when you put on those bike shorts with the bike pads,
Yeah.
one, they're so tight and fluffy, you don't know if you're gonna shit or fart. It's
Right.
real.
Tricks you into complacency kills.
Yeah, so you got to be real careful.
Yeah, false
doing that.
security.
So I'm not looking forward to wearing that for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I also got some cream that's supposed to, you put it on and you lather up, like spackle your butthole with it.
Okay.
It's supposed to numb everything up.
Okay.
I don't know if I need all that, but
Better safe than sorry. I'll tell you that much.
that's exactly right. You can only be so safe with your butthole and with your home. This episode of Zero Block 30 is sponsored by Simply Safe. Simply Safe offers an advanced home security and 24/7 monitoring that is accessible to all with low upfront cost and monitoring plans for less than $1 a day. With 24/7 lifeguard protection, Simply Safe agents can act on an alarm within 5 seconds of receiving the alarm signal, deterring intruders and dispatching police, because in a crisis, every single moment counts. Simply Safe is an advanced home security system that puts you first. I mean, whenever I'm out of town, I love having Simply Safe and knowing that everything is going to be good. Even if my wife is out of town too, if we're on vacation, I can check in. I can go onto our cameras from anywhere in the world and make sure, except for, I don't think you can do it in, what's it called? Algeristan?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Azerbaijan.
Aberdeen.
Yeah. Yep. Mhm.
Abercrombie.
Try Simply Safe risk-free with a 60-day trial. There's no risk. You're going to get your money back if you don't like it. And when you purchase, you can choose how you install your system. It's easy to do yourself, or you can have a pro do it for you with professional installation. By partnering with Simply Safe, there's a real peace of mind. We want you to have it too. Get an exclusive 20% off any new Simply Safe system you sign up for with Fast Protect monitoring. Visit simplysafe.com/ZBT. That's simplysafe.com/CBT. There is no safe like Simply Safe. All right, we're going to sound the retreat.
What?
What?
have a round.
You do have a round.
I want to give I'm a cat lady. I'll be super quick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a cat lady. I have my cat Spork, who I'm obsessed with. And
I have Sprinkle Dinkles.
I've always been a cat lady. We've joked about military working cats,
Mm-hmm.
but we're like, that's not a thing. There's the videos where the dogs go crazy when the veteran gets home from war and the dog's like, oh, and then there's the joking
Hold me
one.
when I'm here.
And then there's like the troop getting home from war to their cat, and the cat's like, I
Fuck
don't give
you.
a shit.
Yeah,
There are military working cats.
there's not.
There absolutely are. I got
Mm-mm.
tagged today in a post
Mhm.
from a gentleman named Seth. He said, I thought you would enjoy this. It's a military working cat up for adoption. What's Joint Base MHH?
Joint
Oh,
base.
Fort Myers. Okay. So there is military working cat Rihanna is available for adoption. She served in the old guard for a decade, protecting the Saison horses from pests and raising morale. She loves her butt scratched. She'll purr for attention. You can adopt her. So if you're in the
See,
Fort
look,
Myers
I don't
area-
like to be a gatekeeper. This cat hung out in a barn.
She killed people. How many kills do you know? She's got more kills than a lot of us. You might have some.
Yeah.
Never mind.
You're like, how
Okay.
many do you have? And then you stop.
I stopped. But she's also got kills. Rihanna also is killed. That's all I'm saying. I made it weird, but I didn't
She
know.
probably has more than me for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, pests and
Yeah.
mice and rats and keeping the horses safe. And so there are military working cats. And I would just like to salute Rihanna
Yeah, absolutely, Rihanna.
on her time at Fort Myers.
Rihanna's
So I
a great
love
cat
that.
name too.
It is. She's a
Also,
cutie.
I'm getting so close to getting a third dog. You have no idea. Like, because I keep doing these events with Stella Blue with Paul
Oh,
Chicago.
dude, I know. Jersey Jerry almost got a dog yesterday.
I know he is going to get one.
He is. Okay.
And I'm going to help him train it. So that dog's name was Ruffles. It's a little fawn, little staffy pitty that's about the same size as Miss Peaches.
Yeah.
Full grown too. There's that dog. And then there's another dog that was a golden retriever, but it had the biggest block head I've ever seen. It looked like a lion's head on a dog.
Yeah.
And the dog's name was Theodore.
Ugh.
And I took a picture of Theodore and kept it in. I didn't share it with any of my family members. One, because I think that's the wrong thing to do.
Right.
I think if
Can't
you
get hopes up.
Yeah, if you're in the position of being the dog adopter, like Annalise wouldn't do it with cats. She decides on cat personality. I decide on dog personality.
Right.
I wanted to bring this dog home so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Theodore, Gus, and Dale.
You know, Theodore and Gus are two of the mice from Cinderella. I mean, that's kind of meant to be.
I might have to do it. And I actually did show Cardi the picture this morning.
There's Gus and Theodore. They're like best buddies.
Gus is fat too, right?
Yeah.
Isn't Gus the fat one?
Mm-hmm.
Not shaming, just
no
descriptor.
Just saying. Interesting. Sounds like they belong together. Just saying.
It really does. All right. We'll be back here next week. Cons will be back. I'm not sure what he's doing. Big boy stuff.
He's doing big boy stuff.
He's doing big boy stuff. We're not.
He's real. Yeah. He's a real person with a real job.
I'm a real boy.
He's a real boy.
All right. Here's our interview that we did with Woody Williams. You're going to enjoy it. I still think having this was done right during COVID and he wasn't doing a whole lot. Like he said it after the interview was over. And I was like, well, do you mind if my kids come down and meet you? And he was like, absolutely. So my kids came down and they were really gracious and they talked to each other for about 10, 15 minutes after. And Cardi couldn't give a shit less at that time, like what had happened,
At
but
that
he
age,
was
yeah.
super interested in their story. So it was really cool.
Yes.
Like just
that's
how,
awesome.
I mean, he's just unbelievably kind. Here's Woody Williams. Well, now in Zero Block 30, I am privileged to have Medal of Honor recipient, fantastic man. He lives in West Virginia, born and bred. He is Woody Williams. We are so happy to have you, Mr. Williams. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, certainly my pleasure, chaps.
So I want to talk to you and go back to the 1940s because you didn't just try to join the Marine Corps right when things were getting going, right at Pearl Harbor. You tried to join a little bit before, right?
Well, no. In 1941, when Pearl Harbor was struck, I happened to be in what was called the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Okay.
And in that corps, that group, you could go in when you were 16 years old. And President Roosevelt started that program nationwide to try to give the youth something to do where they could possibly learn a trade, because the Depression was on, there were just no jobs and a bunch of young people didn't have anything to do. So it ended up there about, 700,000 of us served in the Civilian Conservation Corps. So I was in Montana, Whitehall, Montana, the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed. And they called us out the day after, on the 8th. There were about 265 of us in that camp. And those camps were run by the Army. We had a commanding officer, we had a first sergeant and a best sergeant, and a few Army clerks that did all the administrative work. And they called us out and told us that we were going to war. And of course, President Roosevelt had already announced that. And that we had a choice. If we were over 18 years of age, we could go direct into the Army. We wouldn't have to even go home. But I was only 17. And if under 18, of course, you had to have parent consent. And my mother lived back in West Virginia. My father was already deceased. So there was no way in the world I could ever get consent. So I took the option of coming home. And after I got home, I wanted to join, still at 17, but my mother would not sign my paper to give me permission. So I had to wait until I was 18. And 1 month after my 18th birthday in October, I went into the town, and there was one building where all the services were gathered. all the branches of services. And I wanted to be a Marine. I didn't want to be an Army guy. I didn't want to wear that ugly Army uniform. So I wanted to
Same
be
for
a
me.
Marine. Set of dress shoes and all that. And so when I filled out my paper and gave it to the Marine, he didn't even, I don't think, looked at my paper, he just looked at me and he said, "You're too short. I can't take you." And they did have a height requirement at that time of 5'8" or better. So I went back to the farm. There wasn't anything else I could do. And I would have eventually been drafted and ended up in the Army, of course. But in early 1943, the Marine Corps already would begin having casualties because of Guadalcanal, which was hit in 42. And of course, lots of campaigns were planned, apparently. So they lowered the height requirement. And that Marine, I am sure, turned down a great number of us, because in our community, we had a lot of Italian people, and they mostly were short like me. They didn't meet that height requirement either. So he came to the farm and looked me up and said, "Do you still want to go to the Marine Corps?" And I said yes. And okay.
See, and that's when recruiting gets tough. We have that same type of thing now where they, at first, if you had a certain amount of tattoos, they weren't letting you in. A couple years into the war on terror, they're like, well, maybe we'll let a few people in with tattoos.
So, yeah. So in May of 43, I finally shipped off. We had a waiting period back then. There were so many people taking 2 people into the Marine Corps from each county. And 2 of us from my county, and then we had 2 other guys from adjoining counties, and 6 of us got selected to go into the Marine Corps. And instead of going to Parris Island, which we should have gone because we were East Coast, they sent us all the way to San Diego, because Parris Island was getting so many people, they couldn't find drill instructors and didn't have housing and, that sort of thing. So they began shipping train loads of people to California.
So when you were actually on the boats and getting ready to start doing the island hopping campaigns, did you have any inclination about what to expect? Were your intelligence briefs good? Or were you basically, you get off the ship and it's time to fight?
Basically, that was it. But we were fortunate in my platoon. We did have, we had 3 drill instructors, and 2 of those individuals had already been in Guadalcanal. So they were combat experienced, and that was beneficial because they were talking the reality of combat. But you take the other drill instructors that had never been overseas yet, they couldn't help them. So as you said, you didn't know what you were going to get into when you went to the beach.
So with men like that, whenever you have, I assume, guys like John Basilone that were on the ship that had this reputation, were you already looking at the people who had been in Guadalcanal and thinking, thank goodness they're here, so we have a little bit of experience on our side?
I don't know that we thought that way, but when they was teaching us or talking to us, particularly those 2 individuals, they could talk in reality and warn you and give you basic information of things not to do to be safe, not get yourself killed. So that was helpful.
And I think of somebody like yourself, whenever I heard stories or I'd read stories and see it on documentaries and things like that, of people who were flamethrowers, essentially, of being big guys because they weigh 70 pounds. And I would think you would be almost like a machine gunner now, where you want to be bigger and stockier. So when I hear your story being turned away for being on the smaller side, it's mind-blowing that that's the job that you were picked for.
Well, most of us, There were actually 7 of us in this special weapons unit that was set up on Guadalcanal. In January of '44, we received these huge wooden crated boxes, and we had no idea what they were, what was in those. But when we opened them up, there was a piece of equipment none of us had ever seen before, a flamethrower. We didn't know what it was or how to use it.
And it's not like you could go on YouTube and check it out.
That's exactly right. And it didn't have any manual of how to use it in combat. It did have a manual that showed you all the part numbers and how to take it apart and put it together. And it came with a powdered phosphorus, a powder that had phosphorus in it. And that was what you were supposed to use in those flamethrowers. You'd mix that with gasoline and it would turn into a gel, a sticky, real sticky gel. Well, if you got that on your body or you got it on the enemy, the phosphorus continued to burn. And there was no way you could brush it off. You could even stick your hand underwater. If you got it on your hand, you could stick your hand underwater and the phosphorus still burned. It didn't make any difference, you know. So that was the material that they sent us. But it was a single stream, like a water stream out of a water hose. And you only had 72 seconds of fluid in your flamethrower, 4.5 gallons of stuff. And the air tank would force it out in 72 seconds. So by the time, when you're trying to hit a target with it and you can't aim, you're firing from the hip. You know, now you can't sight it like a rifle.
Yeah, there's no iron sights on that thing.
That's right. No sights. You'd be out of fluid before you'd ever find the target if it wasn't a big thing. So my gunnery sergeant, who happened to be a China Marine, he was in China during the Depression years in the 30s. He began experimenting with other stuff, other kinds of fluids, and we finally ended up with diesel fuel and airplane gasoline. And
my goodness,
a mixture of that he worked it out and he was satisfied with it, and that's what we used.
Now, I imagine just knowing Marines, because we like to think of you guys, the Iwo Jima veterans, where you are just stoic warriors. But I know deep down inside, the first time you guys lit that thing on fire, everybody started to cheer. And you're like, oh, yeah.
That's right. You are absolutely right. It was something we had never experienced before. And because of the mixture of gasoline, of course, gasoline, if you just throw it or send it out under pressure, once it hits wind resistance, it stops. It doesn't go very far. So the diesel fuel gave it body so that it would go farther. But even at that, if you fired it into the air, say body height or head height, it still wouldn't go anywhere because the wind resistance would catch it and it just stopped. And so this gunnery sergeant came up with the idea of firing it 15, 20 yards in front of you on the ground into a great big orange fireball and rolling that ball into a cave or a pillbox.
Mm.
And I don't know whether any other units use that system or not. I have no idea. I've watched some of the film that looks like they're firing about body level. And what they were using in the way of fluid to give it body, I have no idea.
And using a weapon like that has got to be, for the person on the other end of the trigger, horrific. Like the things that you see, and seeing that you wear the medal still, you're wearing the medal today for those that are listening while they're driving to work or doing whatever they're doing. I look at somebody like you and imagine telling a story like yours over and over again for 70 years now has got to take a toll mentally. Did you ever feel like you were able to really heal from those moments by having to replay essentially the worst day of your life over and over again, or days of your life?
Well, we didn't know anything about PTS.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't something that we had come up with yet. In World War II, the diagnosis of a person who had some PTS, as we call it today, we called it psychoneuroses. And of course, most people in combat had some form of that to some degree. But the best thing that happened to me, really, was that by virtue of having the Medal of Honor, I became a public figure. I had to participate in public. I was expected to tell my story. I was expected to associate and answer questions and have programs like you and I are doing today, only we did it by radio or speech. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me because it was a therapy. I couldn't keep it pinned up inside of me because I had to talk about it. And that helped. It really did.
So you've basically been doing group therapy for 75 years.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, you know, I didn't know it at the time, but it really was beneficial to me. And but it still took many years to finally get it to the point where it didn't keep me awake anymore.
Okay, good. And I've talked to Kyle Carpenter a few times about this same type of thing because you were a young man when you received the Medal of Honor as well. It's got to be almost at days where you didn't want to talk about things that happened and you had to put on a happy face just because you were aware of the medal. And now being the last Marine from World War II that's still with us is just, your life has just been so remarkable. When you look around at America now, do you have any wisdom that you would like to impart on our younger listeners of things that they could do better to be better people?
Well, somewhere I feel, chaps, that we have lost our value of our country, our patriotism. We don't look at America today like we did in World War II, World War I, or World War II, and for that matter, Korea or Vietnam. We're not looking at the same world through the eyes of our youth today that even you look through in Fallujah, because our values are changing or have changed so rapidly. We're losing that high respect and regard for the very freedom that we have and the privilege of living in such a great country as America. And I don't know how to restore that. If I'm anxious about the fact that we can't gather together as a united people like we were in previous years. I think, and I've said this many times in many places, I believe we're more divided today than we have ever been, other than the Civil War. And these riots and things that are going on today just further convinces me that somehow we've got to restore in America the true America that we all want to have and true Americans that we want to be.
And you do a lot of that with your foundation, focusing on the relationships that you build with Gold Star families and those that are sacrificing for the ability to express freedom of speech and freedom of protest and things like that. Can you tell us about why your passion shifted so much to the Gold Star families?
Well, if I could back up for just a moment, the Gold Star Mothers were started in World War I, as you no doubt know. And for years, we talked a lot about, and many communities paid tribute and honor to Gold Star Mothers. But no one ever mentioned any other part of the family. And in a few years back, probably around 2010 or that period, I was speaking to a group of senior citizens, and we had Gold Star Mothers in the group. Some of those mothers had lost loved ones in the Death March, in the Japan Death March, and and in the Philippines when it was captured. So we paid proper tribute to them. And after this whole thing was over, and one man stayed in the hall, and I asked him, could I be of some help to him? And he walked up to me and tears were flowing down his cheeks. And I had talked about Gold Star mothers over and over and over because they suffered the loss of a loved one, their own. And when he walked up to me, all he said to me was, "Dads cry too." And I had never mentioned Dad. And all the effort that we'd made or the talks that we'd given and whatever, no one had ever mentioned Dad. And I decided at that time, we've got a memorial on our Capitol grounds that has 11,434 names on it, and every one of those sacrificed their life in the armed forces. We certainly have paid proper tribute to them, but we didn't do anything to pay honor and tribute to their families. And it's the families that's left behind who are suffering, who are grieving, who has an empty place at the table. So I decided we must do something to honor our own in West Virginia. And we did that in 2013, built the first Gold Star Family Memorial ever constructed in the United States of America, in this little state of West Virginia. And we did it for our own, thinking that's all we're going to do. When we applied for our program, nonprofit, they said, you got to have a goal. I said, okay, goal will be one of these in every state.
See, they shouldn't even be able to tell you what you need. You should be able to say, I want to start a foundation, and they say, Mr. Williams, okay. You clear your flamethrower on Iwo Jima, you get to start any foundation you want to.
But other states began to pick it up, and the second one really Valley Forge. Can you think of a more appropriate place than Valley Forge?
Right.
It was the son of a father that had lost his life in Vietnam that said, well, we need one of these in our community to represent our Gold Star families, and then it began to move forward. And today, not because of what I did, it's because what the communities are doing. People in communities, if you give them the opportunity and the right circumstances, they will do anything to serve our country, help it in some way, rather than destroy it. And today, in 45 states, we've already have a monument completed. And we're going to get the others before we're finished. It's just a matter of time. But we've got 70 more in process. So I'm so proud of our little state of West Virginia, because right now we already have 7, and 5 more on the books or in the process. So we're going to end up with 12. And at that point, if we get those completed next year, we'll be ahead of any other state in the union.
Well, that'll be 2 things that you guys have: the best fall leaf changes and the first dedicated memorial to all the fallen families.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you one more question about Iwo. When you all were coming back, when the island campaigns were over, because I think a lot of people lose sight that they see such a monumental moment in the raising of the flag on Mount Suribachi. But that wasn't the end of the island campaign for you guys. You guys had to pick up from Iwo and move on and continue island hopping. But when it was finally done and you were on your way home, did you have any idea what you had accomplished and that you would be the backbone of the legacy of the United States Marine Corps?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was Iwo Jima, as far as we were concerned, was just another campaign. We had been in Guam the year before, in July and August, and we had taken Guam back from the enemy. And this was just another campaign. The thing that made it iconic, I think, was Old Glory. the fact that she was on a mountaintop where everybody on the island could see her. Now, we put a flag up on every island we ever captured, you know, but you couldn't, once you got out of the area, you couldn't see it. You get out of mind, out of sight. But with Mount Suribachi, you couldn't miss it. I mean, it's the highest point on the whole island, and the island was only, you know, it was only 2.5 miles wide and 4.5 miles long. So you can see 4.5 miles if it's up in the air. And so I think it was the flag that made it such an iconic situation, more so than just taking the island.
Oh, no doubt about it. Mr. Williams, I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's such an honor to be able to interview you and speak with you man to man, person to person. And again, for the legacy that you've left behind and for the things that you do now currently, like, I don't know if a lot of people know, but Kyle Carpenter and I sat at the Coca-Cola 600 a couple years ago. And I asked him some of the same questions that I asked you today about what it was like receiving the Medal of Honor and having almost some of the burden that was there. And he told me, he said, you know, I had men like Woody Williams reach out to me after I found out that I was going to receive the Medal of Honor. And he kind of took me under his wing and told me what to expect a little bit. And I thought that kind of thing is what goes unnoticed. It's the type of leadership that happens behind the scenes. And it really is what makes people like you and your generation very special. And I hope that while everything that's going on that's so turbulent in America right now, we can receive some of that sacrifice to take some of the things that we have for granted and look at the future and say, you are the future. Just like Kyle Carpenter is going to be sitting in your seat 60 years from now, talking to some other bald-headed veteran about the things that he accomplished in Marja. And I hope that it continues to go on because of legacies like you, people like you, Mr. Williams.
Yes, and we must not ever forget those of today. We're still having Americans sacrifice their life for somebody else and for a cause greater than themselves. And when they first started talking about having an all-volunteer forces, I was the doubting Thomas. I really was. I didn't think we would ever be able to have enough true Americans who are willing to sign an oath and go to combat, not knowing if they're ever going to get back home. But it has worked and worked beautifully, and you still have those individuals who sacrifice their life for somebody else. But that, you can't get any better than that so far as loyalty is concerned.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Goodbye.